Hey guys, this video is for the seniors in Disco. Hopefully, if you're watching this on Wednesday before 1 o'clock, I just want to remind you that starting at 1 on Wednesday, we're going to pause everything, all our work in memory of Mr. Murphy. That's a time of reflection about his life, his legacy, and about what he meant to you in the school community. So if you're watching if you're watching on Wednesday before 1 o'clock, just remember that if we should stop working at 1. All your teachers are hopefully gonna respect that. And if you're watching after 1 o'clock on Wednesday, then you're fine. So keep watching. Okay, so today we're going to continue talking about life in the 1990s. We're going to switch back to politics, and we're going to talk about what happened after Newt Gingrich and the Republicans won control over Congress in 1994. Remember, their platform was called the Contract with America, right? Where they proposed pretty bold conservative initiatives of big tax cuts for the wealthy, cuts in entitlement programs, less regulation, welfare reform, basically a conservative wish list. And Newt Gingrich, who was the leader of the Republican Party in the 1994, he became Speaker of the House in 1995 after the Republicans won control over the House, and Newt Gingrich became the foil for Bill Clinton. Um, and the thing is that we'll talk more about Gingrich in a little bit, but Gingrich and a lot of Republicans interpreted the fact that the Republicans won control over the Congress as a mandate for the contract with America, saying the American people obviously are behind the contract, by electing a Republican Congress. But was that really the case? We'll talk about that. Now, Gingrich promised that he was going to hold a vote on all 10 provisions of the contract with America in the first 100 days of 1995. Now, if you guys remember your history from last year, remember President Roosevelt, FDR, actually proposed, his first 100 days was very, very bold, right? He proposed a lot of his major New Deal initiatives in the first 100 days because of the economic emergency of the Great Depression. Now, the contract with America was almost entirely an economic agenda. Tax cuts, a balanced budget, less regulation on business, and it was also structural, saying we have to change the way government works, particularly the way that Congress works. And as we talked about in our Contract with America video, he generally avoided talking about social issues. So there really was no talk about abortion or gay rights or school prayer or any of those big issues that animated a lot of Christian conservatives. Now, in many ways, the contract with America was seeking to undo the Great Society, even pillars of the New Deal, to an extent, particularly the regulation of economic markets. So this was a very bold agenda. But remember, you can't get anything passed unless you actually, unless the president goes for it. So is Bill Clinton going to go for these sweeping conservative initiatives? Another question I think we should ask ourselves is, did the voters actually endorse the contract with America by voting Republican in the congressional elections in 1994? When they did a survey, an exit poll, when they question you as you're leaving the polls, only 30% of voters said they even heard of the contract with America. So that's it's a little bit difficult for Gingrich and the Republicans to make this argument that people were endorsing the contract with America when most people had never even heard of the contract with America. But to be fair, the Republicans, the 1994 election was a solid Republican victory. They won the House, they won the Senate, they won the majority of the governor's mansion. Not one Republican incumbent lost who was running for re-election in 1994, and some big Democratic icons were defeated. I remember I was very young, but Mario Cuomo, who I liked even then when I was a kid, I like now He passed away. His son is the governor. I like him a little less. But Mario Cuomo was an icon for a lot of progressives in the Democratic Party. When he was running for a fourth term as governor of New York, he was defeated, and a lot of people that thought Cuomo was not beatable at all, but he was. Ann Richards, who was an iconic governor of Texas, the last Democrat elected governor of Texas, she lost to George W. Bush. You might have heard of him. In 1994. So we had big Democratic icons who went down, and the Republicans did really, really well in the 1994 election. Now, Bill Clinton had an eye on 1996. Remember, Bill Clinton, like all presidents, wanted to win a second term. So how is he going to take this very difficult situation with Republicans controlling the House of Representatives and the Senate? And how could he possibly turn that to his advantage? Going into the 1996 election. Now, Bill Clinton hired a political operative that he had been involved with in Arkansas. Years ago when he was running for governor. A man named Dick Morris. Now, Dick Morris by this time actually wasn't really even a liberal. I don't even know if he was still a Democrat. Now you see him on Fox. He's quite conservative today. But Bill Clinton literally moved Dick Morris into the White House in order to advise him on political strategy. And what they came up with was a strategy called triangulation. Now, the whole idea of triangulation is that Bill Clinton could actually score politically by, let me show you this triangle. This is the once a year when I actually do something mathematical, drawing a triangle, and it isn't even that good. So here's a triangle. So here's liberals right here on this side. Then we have the right-wing Republicans like Newt Gingrich and the Contract with America type people on this side. And then Bill Clinton would present himself as someone who would be a contrast with both the liberals and the right-wing Republicans. And Morris, who was Clinton's advisor, and Clinton himself embraced the strategy because they thought this will put him in a much better position, because he said the American people are not with the liberals, but they're really not with the right-wing Republicans either. So if he presented himself as the centrist, apart from the Republicans and apart from the liberals in the Democratic Party, this could actually put Bill Clinton in a strong position going into the 1996 election. Now, triangulation was seen by a lot of liberals as capitulation. Like, why are you even saying that you're going to be centrist? You're a Democrat. You should be proud of being of embracing liberal initiatives. But Clinton said this is, maybe never articulated this way, but Clinton pretty much felt that this was the only way that he'd ever have a chance of winning re-election, with a Republican-controlled Washington, or getting any political points at all. Now, the thing is that this was based on a political strategy, basically saying the American people, a little calculation, the American people are really not that conservative. They might not be liberal because they vote for Republican Congress, but they're really not that conservative. So if he's the centrist candidate, he could actually show a contrast between himself and the Republicans. Now, Clinton began embracing some very small initiatives. And the thing is, a lot of people, especially Clinton's critics on the left, basically said, this is just, this is what you're the Democratic president, and this is what you're talking about. So these were the initiatives that Bill Clinton began pushing during these years. And they are, gone is to talk about universal health care, which was the big cause, or gun control, which were his causes in the early part of his administration. Clinton embraced these three to kind of show, see, I'm on the side of American families. V-chips. Now, a lot of you guys probably don't even know what it is, but a V-chip is a small chip that's in every television that basically allows parents to block out sexual content and violence. The V-chip was not in televisions in the mid-1990s, but Bill Clinton said parents should have a choice. There should be a V-chip where they can turn off sexually explicit or violent content. So he said, I'm on the side of American families. See? And V chips ultimately were mandatory in all television sets, and they're in all television sets today. You guys probably don't notice. Maybe your parents did when you were young. Knew what to turn off. Also, he embraced the cause of school uniforms. He said kids should wear uniforms in school. Um, that I've always had, just personally, I don't know how you guys feel about it, but like, I don't support that personally. I think, high school is the time to really express yourself and try new things. And I really don't think that, the government or school should be telling you what to wear. This is your chance to wear whatever you want. But school uniforms are seen as a moderate, family friendly initiative. That way, kids aren't, competing with one another over outfits. There will be less distraction because kids won't be talking about, oh, what are you wearing? What are you wearing? I don't know, but like, that's seen as a family friendly initiative. They tried that very, very briefly when I was in middle school, but it did not work. They tried it like for a week. The other cause that Bill Clinton embraced was the issue of teenage smoking. He said that too many kids are smoking cigarettes. 90% of all adult smokers started when they were under 18. And there was this, if I was in class, I would show it to you, but you can Google it if you're curious. But there was a popular cartoon character in the mid 1990s called Joe Camel, where he was this cool camel where he wore sunglasses and played the saxophone. And he was put in ads for Camel cigarettes. And the number of teenagers smoking Camel cigarettes skyrocketed. Now, Camel cigarettes were very popular among very, very old people. It was a popular brand of cigarette like in the 1930s and 1940s. So young people were not smoking Camel cigarettes. But after the Joe Camel TV ads, and not just, excuse me, not TV ads, cigarette ads, TV ads are not allowed since the 70s. But Joe Camel was unavoidable. If you were walking around New York City, the cartoon of Joe Camel was on the store, was on the front door of almost every bodega you could imagine. The cartoon was in magazines, in billboards. So Joe Camel was kind of an unavoidable cultural presence in the 1990s. And he said that Clinton said that's wrong because that's basically encouraging kids to smoke. So he embraced the cause of limiting teenage smoking, which is a very worthy cause. But he focused on these three issues as a way to try to, pivot away from traditional liberalism, but also pivot away from, from the right-wing Republicans. Now, Newt Gingrich was very successful in actually getting a lot of his initiative passed. He actually got, of the 10 initiatives in the contract with America, 9 actually got passed. And the thing is, that's pretty good. The only one that wasn't passed was term limits. And the thing is that Bill Clinton, was faced with a situation where it seemed like the Republicans were ascendant, were triumphant by able to pass all these initiatives. In fact, Bill Clinton actually had the humiliation of actually being asked in April 1995 at a press conference by a reporter, how are you still relevant? And then he was like, I'm still relevant. I'm the president. Of course, I'm still relevant. But for the president of the United States to actually be asked about that, that really, that kind of shows you, what his political position was at the time. But the thing is about Newt Gingrich, and you still see Newt Gingrich around. He's a big Trumper now. He's on Fox a lot. Newt Gingrich did not wear well. There are some people who, and you'll see this in life, not just in politics, but there are some people who wear well. Like the more you know them, the more you get to like them. Even if you might have been a little resistant in the beginning, when you get to know them, they grow on you. But there are other people who do the opposite. The more you get to know them, the less you like them. Newt Gingrich was definitely in that category. Newt Gingrich definitely had a messianic streak. He was in interviews comparing himself to the Duke of Wellington, to Churchill, saying his passing the contract with America was similar to, D-Day, and all sorts of really grandiose statements that struck a lot of people as very odd and very egocentric. Now, Gingrich was also much more radical than most Americans, even than a lot of Republicans. He was more radical than Ronald Reagan, the Republican icon, for sure. So the thing is that Bill Clinton kind of felt, well, one other thing. Not only was Newt Gingrich and the Republicans controlling Congress, there was a strong right-wing cultural element that was popular in the 1990s as well. There was a militia movement, like anti-government extremists who formed militias, particularly out west, particularly focused on the gun control issue, opposed to gun control. They were kind of rising in prominence in the 1990s. Some of it was very conspiratorial, talking about black helicopters from the UN about to take over the United States. And there were 800 armed militias in America in 1995. Were operating in 23 states. There was violent anti-abortion extremism, which was growing. So there was right-wing talk radio was just beginning. Fox News actually started in the mid-90s. So there was this whole right-wing cultural element that was actually rising in prominence in the 1990s, in addition to having control over Congress. Now, the thing is that Newt Gingrich was much better at politics than he was at governing. That's the thing about politics, guys. The thing is, a good politician has to have two skills, which in many ways are unique to one another. One, you have to win elections, and you got to convince people to vote for you. But two, you got to be able to govern effectively. You got to be a good manager. You got to be a good administrator. And sometimes those two skills, the best people, the best politicians can do both of those things well. But some people are better at one than the other. Some people are really good politicians, but not really good managers. Some people are really good at the job, but can't get themselves elected or can't win elections or persuade other people to vote with them. So you have to have both to be a really good politician. And Gingrich was certainly better at the politics part than at the governing part. And Bill Clinton basically stayed on the sidelines as Newt Gingrich and the Republicans were proposing an increasingly radical agenda, particularly focused on cutting Medicare spending. Now, Medicare is one of the most important and popular government programs. It's health insurance for those over 65. Newt Gingrich and the Republicans said we're just slowing the growth of Medicare. But Bill Clinton was able to position himself as a defender of Medicare. Even people who are conservative, they want their parents to have health insurance. So Medicare is a very popular program. And in addition to triangulation, Bill Clinton proposed that he focus on these things: M squared, E squared, Medicare, Medicaid, education, and the environment. That these four issues actually benefit Democrats. And they draw a contrast with Republicans, who they say are just way too extreme on these issues, then Democrats will actually benefit politically. Now, the thing is that the situation kind of got really bizarre and dicey because Newt Gingrich and the Republicans in the House and the Senate passed this sweeping budget, which called for big cuts in government programs, including very popular ones. Once the thing is that sometimes cutting government spending sounds popular, but when you get into the weeds, what does the government actually spend money on? A lot of these things are very popular, right? It spends money on preschool, on student loans, on trading for the unemployed, on school lunches, right? Government spending, it sounds good to cut it, but that's what the government spends money on. Things that people like and want and feel that fellow Americans need. Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, all these programs. So the thing is that they were not in no mood to compromise the Republicans. They were just going to pass the sweeping budget, and basically they thought Clinton would blink. But he didn't. Clinton didn't blink at all. In fact, the Clinton just refused to negotiate, over cuts to Medicare. He said, "This is my red line. I am not moving beyond this." He said, and this is odd for Bill Clinton. Usually he wasn't willing to take such bold steps, but he said, "I don't care if my approval rating goes down to 5%. I will never cut Medicare." So the thing is that the Republican budget was sent to him. He vetoed it, and the government shut down because the president and Congress have to agree on a budget. There was no plan B. The Republicans were like, oh, so they passed a temporary extension of government spending. But then 3 weeks later, then the government reopened. But then 3 weeks later, they sent Bill Clinton the same budget. With deep cuts to Medicare, tax cuts for the rich, and Clinton vetoed it, and the government shut down again for another 3 weeks. Now, what does that mean when the government shuts down? It means no paychecks for federal workers. It means that It means that parks, national parks, are closed. If people feel a government shutdown, if you want a passport, you can't get one because because the government offices are closed. And then Newt Gingrich just was being blamed, and the Republicans were being blamed for this for this government shutdown. And some of the things that he said were just like unbelievable. Like Gingrich in November 1995, Yitzhak Rabin, the prime minister of Israel, was assassinated. It was very tragic. He was a man who wanted to make peace with the Palestinians. He was assassinated by an Israeli extremist. And the American government went to Yitzhak Rabin's funeral, and Rabin was an iconic figure. So the thing is that, and it was so horrible what happened to him, he was just killed. And Newt Gingrich actually said, well, when we came back from Yitzhak Rabin's funeral, Bill Clinton made me leave from the back of Air Force One. And I was really mad about that. So that made me take a harder line against Bill Clinton in the budget negotiations. Just imagine how that must sound, right? That you're actually talking about that, after you're coming back from somebody's funeral after they had been killed. To be so petty. Like the Daily News actually put in their cover a giant baby of Newt Gingrich and saying, big crybaby, right? I shut down the government because I had to leave from the back of the plane. So it really was unbelievable. So the government shut down and Clinton was just wouldn't blink. And the thing is, that was odd. Clinton usually did take hard lines like that, but Clinton ultimately succeeded. The Republicans ultimately capitulated, passed a budget with Bill Clinton's what Bill Clinton wanted in the budget, or at least they took out Republicans a lot of what they wanted. And the thing is that the government reopened on Bill Clinton's terms. So this was a major victory for Bill Clinton politically. Gingrich later admitted to underestimating Bill Clinton. And the thing is, from this point on, this was early 1996, it was pretty clear that Bill Clinton was going to be the driver's seat going into the 1996 election, which is an unbelievable reversal from what things had looked like only a year earlier, when it looked like Bill Clinton was on his political deathbed. All right, guys, very good. Hopefully you watch the video from beginning to end. I will, vacation or not vacation, whatever it is coming up. In our next videos, I'm going to talk about two big non-political, but even though they got, I'll take that back completely. They were very political moments in America that happened in 1995 that really kind of defined American life in the 90s. The Oklahoma City bombing in 1995, which was the worst terrorist act in American soil before 9/11, and also the O.J. Simpson trial, which polarized America when a football legend was put on trial for killing his ex-wife and her friend. So we'll talk about those two things. So please, I take that back. Both those things were very, very political. All right. So thank you for watching. I miss all of you guys. Miss all you seniors, and I hope to see you on the other side.